Hi, it's Davina. We're in my kitchen. I'm in my super cutie t-shirt. It's almost a cutie pie t-shirt, which would be completely on track for what I'm doing today. Today I'm doing the classic pie from my family that appeared at both Thanksgiving and Christmas, my grandmother's pumpkin pecan pie. Now, pumpkin pecan pie has been done by a lot of different people. Nancy Reagan has a pumpkin pecan pie recipe. I believe that Bon Appetit, before their whole implosion thing last year, did a pumpkin pecan pie. Pumpkin pecan pie, it's taking two very awesome pies and turning them into one. If you've watched Tasting History, the historical pumpkin pie actually has apples in it. So that's taking apple pie and pumpkin pie put together. And I'm imagining eventually we're gonna have this Venn diagram where you have this historic pumpkin apple, pumpkin pecan, pumpkin apple pecan pie, and everything will reach the singularity of holiday pies. But we're not there yet, because I'm going to share with you my grandmother Leona's pumpkin pecan pie. Now, before I actually get into ingredients, does your pumpkin pie have to be made with pumpkin? And if it does, what kind of pumpkin should you use? Well, the answer is no. It doesn't have to be pumpkin. And yeah, there's a difference in pumpkins. If you've gone shopping for pumpkins close to Halloween, there's pumpkins that are better for carving. And then there's pumpkins that have like a hard, crusty outside and they look really cool, but they are also not good to carve or to try and cook and scoop out. And then there are some that are sometimes called sugar pumpkins or sweet pumpkins or pie pumpkins. And those guys absolutely can make it into a pie because they've got more sugar in it. Now, pumpkin being the preferred filling of your holiday pies is really a New England sort of thing for Thanksgiving. In the South, they use sweet potatoes and do sweet potato pie. And I find that the flavor is very similar, particularly if you use the same spices as you would in a pumpkin pie. So I have no problem if you want to pick up some of these. I think these are red jewel yams, but they're not yams. Yams are totally different. These are sweet potatoes. So if you want to do sweet potatoes, go for the red colored ones. Sometimes they'll be labeled yams. They are not yams, but yeah, it's marketing. So sweet potatoes absolutely work as a substitute. Sweet sugar pie pumpkins totally work. You can also go for a butternut squash, or this is a butterkin squash. I think they're related because they've got a similar outside. But you know that the inside is going to have a slightly yellower look than the orange of a pumpkin. There's also some great Asian squashes out there that have an orange flesh. I've got a kabocha and a blue curry squash, and I had another one that I actually used in this particular pie that I'm making. And what you're looking for is it to be a fine-grained, sweet, orange-fleshed or golden-fleshed squash. Now you can also get little tiny ones, and these are great if you just want to do some quick cooking of them, because you just slice them in half, scoop out the seeds, microwave them, and then scoop out the flesh. But stay away from acorn squashes, spaghetti squashes, the turban squashes, all of those others that are more grainy in texture and less sweet. Those will not make as good of a pie. You're going to need something that's a bit sweeter than an acorn squash. So these are some of the types of squashes you could use, as well as sweet potatoes, besides a pumpkin in your pumpkin pie. In Asia, interestingly, a lot of different squashes are all translated as pumpkin. So you might be getting something that you hear is a pumpkin, but it's actually something different. If you want to roast your own squash, I suggest that you just quarter it, take out all the seeds, remove any little pithy spots that you might find on the outside, and then in a dish, put in just a little bit of water, cover it with either a lid or some foil, and then roast it until a fork easily slides into the flesh. Once that's done, you can easily scrape off all of the delicious flesh and leave the hard shell behind with just a regular tablespoon. This is my first recipe card book, and it was given to me by my grandmother. She signed it Mutti. It says, "Recipes for happiness. Food controls our lives. We can't live without it. We spend our lifetime producing and preparing it. Friendship and recreation are planned around it. That is why God made it taste good, smell good, look good, and feel good in our tummies. I'm starting this recipe book for you so that you may collect your favorites. Maybe the memories of some of these dishes will be appreciated when you are grown up. Love, Mutti." Now, Mutti is German for mother, but her name was actually Leona, and in all of these lovely cards, I have this. Grandma Leona's pumpkin pecan pie. Now, this was actually sent to me by my sister a Thanksgiving, I think back in the early 2000s, because I had lost the handwritten card. So I got it in an email. "Hi, the pumpkin pecan pie recipe. I forgive my sister's spelling as she forgives mine. I have is for 3 8-inch or 2 9-inch pies." Okay. I've got those. Oh, I've got the crusts in the refrigerator. Prepare pie crust. Mix in large bowl the ingredients in the following order: 5 eggs, 1 1/4 cup white sugar, 1 15-ounce can of pumpkin, not pumpkin pie mix, just pumpkin. Well, I have fresh cooked squash there, as well as one that I froze from last fall and needs to get used up. So that's out of my freezer and defrosted, and I'll measure out 15 ounces of that. A 12-ounce can of condensed is struck out. It has evaporated milk written in. And that's really important. Back in the day, evaporated milk and condensed milk were called the same thing, but there's a big difference between this and this. Evaporated milk, at least here in most of the United States, is liquidy and is often used in chowders and stuff like that. And sweetened condensed milk is more sugary and almost on its way to being dulce de leche. Well, you don't want this. You want this. 1 cup white corn syrup. Now, my grandmother's recipe calls for white corn syrup. However, Nancy Reagan's recipe calls for dark corn syrup. Well, I think there is a definite flavor difference. I know some people will use maple syrup in their pecan or pumpkin pies. If you want to go with that because you live in Vermont or all of Canada, go for it. But I'm going to stick with my grandmother's light corn syrup. 1/3 cup melted butter. I need to melt it down. 1 teaspoon cinnamon, 1/2 teaspoon ginger, 1/4 teaspoon cloves. I have my spice mix. This is a combination of cinnamon and ginger and cloves and allspice and nutmeg and mace and every other spice that would go into tasty, sweet things. I think it even has some cardamom in it. So this is kind of a chai spice mix that I have in here, and I put it on everything. So that's what I'm going to actually use instead of these exact proportions, because it's my favorite spice. Okay, cover bottom of crust with pecan halves. Pour batter over nuts. Bake 15 minutes at 425, then 20 to 30 minutes at 350. Put a cold, dry table knife into custard. When it comes out clean, pies are done. Hope this is helpful for your Thanksgiving. All right, I'll put the recipe up later, but let's just take stock of what we've got. It is 3:35 right now, so that probably takes, if you know where everything is, about 5 minutes to gather up your stuff. So let's say we started at 3:30. let's see how long it takes to make my grandmother's pie. Okay, so it's taken me about 10 minutes to roll out and form the crusts. Now, could I have bought totally pre-formed frozen crusts? Absolutely. Why did I get the refrigerated crusts? Because that's what my grandma did. I've already told you about the story of how she was in a rush, and so she bought pre-made crusts, and then somebody at the potluck complimented her on her amazing, wonderful crusts, and from then on, she decided, why bother making it from scratch? Most people can't tell the difference as long as you've hand crimped your own edge. So I've got one really pretty pie in my really pretty pie pan, and I've got one less pretty pie in my plain old pan. And that's just how it is, because I've only got 2 pie plates. All right, time to make the filling, which means going over to the mixer. But before I do that, I just remembered the instructions said, lay in your pecan noodles. Now, if you're using fresh cooked pumpkin, it's not going to be as finely pureed as if you were to get it out of a can. So I'm just going to use my blender to blend the can of evaporated milk and the squash together till smooth. So, we're sitting here starting our 15 minutes at 4:25, and it is about 4:10 right now. So, after that, it's going to be 20 to 30 minutes down at 350. So, you cook it at hot, and then you bring the temperature down. So, you're looking at about an hour and 15 about to make the pies, but then you've got to bring the temperature all the way down on these pies. Now, you can have them warm, but there are many pies that are actually better on day 2. There's something about the spices and flavors and such like that kind of have a chance to fuse, meld, get together and have a happy party. So I recommend making your pie ahead of time. Also, that huge temperature fluctuation, not conducive to a lot of the other baking you might be doing around Thanksgiving. Now, a lot of people recommend with a custard pie, don't make it more than 4 days ahead. I am doing that. It is, well, let's see. I'm making mine 6 days ahead of actually consuming it. So what am I gonna do? I'm gonna pull it out of the oven when it's done. I'm gonna let it cool down to room temperature, and then I'm gonna put it in my refrigerator. I'm going to crank my refrigerator down to the coolest setting that it will go, so it's as close to freezing as possible. I'm also gonna crank my freezer to its coldest setting, and once I think that the pie has reached whatever the refrigerator just above freezing temperature is, I'm gonna put it in my freezer and I'm going to freeze it as quickly as possible. Why? Well, when you freeze something, the slower it freezes, the bigger your ice crystals. And I don't want a bunch of huge ice crystals, scrambling up my wonderful custardy pecan pie. So yeah, I'm gonna freeze definitely at least one of these pies. The other one I might saran wrap and keep it in my refrigerator and then just warm up the day of Thanksgiving. But you can freeze pies. They are great pulled out of the freezer. I don't think anybody would really complain. And if the texture's a little bit off, just do a terrible job of scooping it out of the pan and throw ice cream on top or Swedish cream on top. Nobody will know, and it still tastes delicious. I mean, it's always great to have pie.
It's always gonna be awesome to have pie, 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 pie.
Doodle-doo! Here is the pie. Now, mine didn't turn out how I remember my grandmother's, and there's a few possibilities. How I remember my grandmother's is the pecans just kind of all rose to the top, and even though you can see a few here, I seem to remember hers, you could see all of the pecans that had risen up through the pumpkin pie and were kind of all shimmering on the top. So, what could be the possible differences? One that comes to mind, her recipe that had condensed milk struck out and then evaporated put on top of it, maybe she did use sweetened condensed milk, and the sugars as they bake would have caramelized and been maybe less thick and would have allowed the pecans to rise up a little more? Maybe. There's also the possibility that because I used, fresh, home-baked squash instead of canned pumpkin, that was thicker and therefore the pecans didn't rise up because of that. I'm gonna have to consult with my sister and see if she has managed to make pumpkin pecan pies as I imagine them with pecans just all over the top. That's how I remember it. So, if I remake this pie and I try it with sweetened condensed milk instead of just evaporated milk, I'll let you know. Recipes are always kind of evolving and changing. Again, this made 2 pies, which is a little bit much here in COVID times, because it's just me and my husband, and we're not going to see anybody else. So this is quite a bit of pie for us to eat all on our own. Fun little thing, and I know my mom watches my videos. This is technically a custard pie or a pudding pie, and she remembers as a child one of the nicknames she gave me was Putty Pie, and there were times that I just would not accept being a putty pie. Well, now I really like pudding pies, so love you, Mom. Happy holidays.